Special thanks to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Spirit for sponsoring today's video. Well, I think it's fair to say that Core 4 is already on something of a hot streak. In episode 41, we saw the wonderfully animated showdown between Yoruichi and Askin, and we're continuing that trend this time around, with episode 42 finally bringing to life perhaps the fight that I wanted to see the most, as Urahara steps in to take on Askin's Volstendish using his long-awaited Bankai. And it looks absolutely incredible. It all honestly looks even better than I had been hoping it would in the long run-up to seeing the episode for the very first time. And yet, not only did this fight look stunning here in the anime, while also managing to do justice to both of these fan-favourite characters in a big way, but it also took Kisuke's Bankai, Kanon Biraki Benehime Aratame, without a doubt one of the most anticipated of all time back when the manga was releasing, and expand on it in some truly surprising and innovative ways, effectively taking what we were shown in the manga and turning it into a totally fresh new look at the humble shopkeeper's ultimate power in a way that we would have never thought of before. Kisuke's Bankai was already shown to be capable of completely controlling the battlefield, allowing him to affect and alter practically every single variable. I had previously praised the manga's brief showing for still managing to show what I thought was almost every single angle of what the Bankai could do, just in rapid succession. From strengthening Kisuke's attacks, to healing his own body, to damaging his enemy, and providing some form of traversal option as well, presenting perhaps the series' most versatile Bankai ever, which was perfect for the special war power known for his incalculable tricks. And yet the anime has gone a step further still, showcasing all of that, but more as well. So, as I continue to work on the review for episode 42, Son of Darkness, today I wanted to take a deeper look at Urahara's Bankai, Kanon Biraki Benehime Aratame, with the new information that we've gleaned from this week's episode and this newly extended fight scene to go on. The Bankai, which I'm saddened to say is unlikely to return, in this arc at least, was never afforded much time in the sun. Now, we know considerably more. So let's take a look. Before we do that, one of the best ways to support the channel is through Patreon, the link to which you can find in the description below. If you like what you see here and you want to see more of it on the channel every single week, then consider becoming a patron supporter. It does help out enormously, just like everyone who is on screen right now. A big thank you goes out to all of my Patreon supporters. It does mean the absolute world, but also an enormous thank you to all of you simply for being here with me today. And speaking of supporting the channel, before we get started, first a word from today's sponsor. There's no doubt the anime mobile game space is absolutely booming right now, and as such it takes a lot to stand out, which is where JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Spirit comes in. Golden Spirit is a brand new JoJo RPG featuring characters from across the generations, from parts 1 through 6 of the iconic manga series, and it's coming soon, with pre-registration open right now. In Golden Spirit, you can build your strategic dream team, and even bring characters from different JoJo parts together in stunning cinematic battles that let the unique power systems of JoJo truly shine. The game officially launches worldwide on August 13th, and to celebrate the countdown, the Music PV trilogy started dropping on July 29th. And looking at this first PV, when it comes to games like this, I think realizing the vision of the characters is perhaps the most important thing they have to get right to truly bring the world of JoJo to life. And it's clear from this trailer that they've totally nailed it here. Not only do the characters themselves look amazing and faithful, but the stand animations are dynamic, they're awesome, and they do a great job of recreating some of the most recognizable poses and moments from the series, showing off the character and ability designs that helped make JoJo iconic in the first place and so enduring. Featuring full, detailed 360-degree 3D action gameplay, Golden Spirit is looking like the definitive JoJo game. So, pre-registration is open right now on iOS and Android, with none other than Joseph Joestar himself on the line as the final milestone reward for all players should the goal be hit. Get involved as part of the community, sign up at the link in my description or the pinned comment below, and help contribute towards unlocking this fan-favourite character. Thanks to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Spirit for sponsoring today's video. So for some context, what do we know about Kisuke's Bankai before the anime, and even before its appearance in the manga? Prior to its reveal in chapter 664, barely 20 chapters from the end of the entire series, Kisuke's Bankai was teased a couple of times. In the Soul Society arc, Yoruichi reveals that Kisuke achieved Bankai in just 3 days, using his own invention, the Tenshintai, a special mannequin that forces your Zanpakuto spirit to materialize, thereby allowing you to bypass, potentially, years and years of training. It's an incredibly dangerous method, but Kisuke succeeded. Then in the Rankar arc, when Chad comes to Kisuke for training, in preparation for the battle against the Espada, and Kisuke gets Renji to lead the training using his Bankai instead, Renji asks why Kisuke can't be the one to train Chad, since he also has a Bankai. While Kisuke initially jokingly tries to brush off the idea that he has a Bankai at all, eventually he relents and mysteriously replies that his Bankai isn't suited for training anyone. These were the only teases that we had to go on for years. Well, that and Benihime Shikai, which you would think would have given us a window into what the Bankai really was all along, and in some ways it kind of does. Benihime embodies the same overall theme of creation and destruction that the Bankai would later come to personify. Before we continue, if you are part of the 50% or so of my viewership that hasn't yet hit subscribe, I'm trying to reach 300,000 subs by the end of the year, so you hitting subscribe would be a big help and make a huge difference in our push to reach that goal. So if you like the video, if you like this kind of content, please consider doing so today. When it comes to the actual Bankai itself, what we get in the anime is almost completely faithful, albeit with some surprising twists. And in a way, this is maybe the best possible outcome, because the anime adapts the Bankai's brief yet comprehensive showing from the manga down to the smallest of details, and then expands on it from there. So let's take a look at the Bankai's appearance in the anime from start to finish, to see not just how it adapted the manga, but also everything new that was added in as well. Plus some parts that are maybe slightly recontextualized, but we'll get to those. So, as Kisuke calls out the word Bankai, we're already treated to some totally brand new spectacle. In the manga, Benihime simply appears behind Kisuke as soon as you turn the page. There's no build-up, there's no fanfare, nothing like that. But here, that's not quite what happens. As Kisuke says Bankai, a black curtain, a veil, seemingly made up of thousands of thin strings, drops down behind the Shinigami, darkening the battlefield. Then, from behind Kisuke, we see something moving towards him. We're given a unique first-person perspective of a gigantic figure dragging itself through the Quincy Street and towards that same curtain. Only from Benihime's perspective, the veil is actually translucent, allowing her to see through and to the two fighters on the other side. This gives the impression that the curtain acts as a doorway of sorts, and Benihime is currently moving through almost like a parallel different dimension or something akin to that to reach the actual battlefield, which is amplified by the peculiar effect shown here on both Benihime's arm and on what I think is meant to be the front part of her robes hanging down. I absolutely adore the mystical music that's playing. It is absolutely perfect for conveying the kind of eerie sensation that Urahara's Bankai is meant to evoke, and I love the sound of the crank clicking and cracking in the background, as though Benihime is being hoisted into the arena by a huge contraption, managed by someone else, someone hidden backstage. But as Benihime arrives, she presses her face up against the curtain, becoming partially visible to those outside for just a moment, before pushing the curtain aside with her arm and emerging in full at last. Again, like I said, as if appearing from a different dimension, a different world entirely. And that's really cool, because it does kind of feel like Kisuke, by invoking Bankai, is asking for assistance from beyond their realm. And I think that's thematically a really awesome idea, especially with everything that Benihime in this form in particular represents. It's interesting, as she moves the curtain aside, you can see the churning effect of her dimension through her as she appears, as though she herself isn't yet opaque. Again, something that's kind of reinforced by her outline currently being highlighted. Then, as the curtain dissipates, unraveling into thousands of shadowy strings, Benihime becomes corporeal in their world as she looms over Kisuke from behind. All of that setup for the Bankai is totally new, and it's all done in service of just simply getting us to the cliffhanger page of chapter 664. Following in the footsteps of the manga, as soon as Kisuke releases his Bankai, Asukin's arm suddenly splits open. And it's kind of funny, the anime colours the void space created by Benihime's ability with a tumultuous red glow. I think it's basically the same colouring that's used within her dimension when she appears, but here it makes the dissecting of Asukin's arm look really kind of graphic and fleshy, when in actuality it technically isn't. There's nothing there at all. But yes, this happens in the manga too, and it's important to stress what I and many others think is actually going on here. Because Kisuke's first usage of his Bankai, the first ever that we see, is one of immediate deception. By opening Asukin's arm like this, and then removing the stitches to close it up once again as soon as Asukin darts backwards, Kisuke is able to fabricate this idea that Benihime's power has a range, as if there's an area of effect around the puppet herself, and that by moving out of said range, Asukin was able to restore his arm. But this clearly is not true. Kisuke immediately establishes the narrative that his Bankai is ranged to lure Asukin into a false sense of security. Asukin is now under the impression, reasonably so after that demonstration, that the Bankai can only affect things in its immediate circular vicinity. In the meantime, however, while Kisuke is distracting Asukin with one hand, with the other, he's busy using his Bankai at an extremely long range to open a door in the Gift Ball Deluxe and ready a pathway to allow Grimmjow to enter in secret. Something that Asukin now won't suspect, which proves to be his undoing. And all of this is purely because Kisuke suspects he might need the unique Hollow Reiatsu of Grimmjow's Resurrection to deliver a killing blow to Asukin. But anyway, so far so good. This part's all the same as the manga. Also, Kisuke notes that most people are so surprised they try to cut off their arm, which if true implies that he pulls this trick on almost everyone he uses Bankai on right away. After this, Benihime places her enormous wooden hands over Kisuke's face and begins working away. Interestingly, this angle from underneath is only in the anime, and it actually shows Benihime manipulating reishi threads. As the giant puppet removes its hands, Kisuke's eyes, once destroyed by Asukin's gift ring, are revealed to be completely restored. Kanon Biraki Benihime Aratame has the ability to restructure anything it touches. Again, same as the manga. But here's where things get kind of wild. We get a brand new shot of Kisuke pulling his sword through the air. As he does so, we now see that his sword acts as an extension of Benihime's Bankai abilities, as he's literally seen cutting through space itself, creating the same void effect that appeared on Asukin's arm, before said void is immediately stitched up again. This is followed up by a shot from the manga, where Kisuke lunges for Asukin and slashes him across the shoulder, moving incredibly quickly, several reams of stitches following him through the air. Now, this is a very interesting shot, because as was revealed in the interview with Kubo and the anime directors after the cinema showing, this panel in the manga was basically the team's inspiration for Kisuke's new movement technique, which we see here in the anime. Speaking of which, Kisuke zips through the air, riding stitches as though they were rails before twisting round and spinning over, bringing his sword down in a violent clash with Asukin, the two of them locking blades in midair. Great little bit of choreography. So, how does this new technique actually work? Arguably, this new movement technique is the crux of how Kisuke's Bankai is shown off here in the anime, and it's extremely cool. As we saw in that very brief shot before he slashed Asukin, Kisuke's blade is now able to cut through space itself, as his weapon is now an extension of his Bankai's restructuring capabilities. So, by generating some acceleration and then driving his blade into the space out in front of him, Kisuke cuts the space open, before it's then immediately stitched back up again by Benihime before his foot reaches it, effectively allowing him completely free and fast movement, as he now rides the stitches as soon as they appear, allowing him to circumvent the Quincy's domination of Varvelt Reishi, by the way, which shuts out most Shinigami from even creating footholds. Basically, to try and simplify it, he's able to lay the track down in front of him at an incredible speed without actually doing anything save for ensuring that his blade continues to cut the space at least arm's length ahead of him. It's extremely cool, it's clever, and it's innovative. Like I said in the interview, the anime team said they took inspiration for this idea from this one panel in the manga, where we can see trails of the stitches are clearly following Kisuke. To be totally honest, I always thought this was just meant to be the same stitches that were clearly still attached to his face in the previous panel, now coming loose as he was leaping forwards and flowing behind him. I don't feel like this movement technique, if I'm being honest, was ever even remotely hinted at here in the manga, but I am very glad the anime introduced it, as it adds yet another layer to Kisuke's Bankai, which could already kind of do everything. But alright, now this next bit is, again, very intriguing, and I would say has introduced a bit of contention as to what the Bankai is actually doing here, whereas in the manga I think it was very clear-cut. In the manga, as Kisuke and Askin clash, pushing against each other, Kisuke lifts his left arm and restructures it, increasing its physical strength to the point where he's able to easily overpower Askin, suddenly sending the sternritter flying through several buildings. This turn of events is pretty evident not just from, literally reading what happens on the page, but specifically from Askin's shocked expression, where we can see him, suddenly looking at Kisuke's newly restructured hand before he is suddenly overwhelmed. In the anime, though, things are a little different. As he and Askin clash, Kisuke lifts his left hand, but wait, it's now coloured a strange purple, as though it's infected. As he restructures his hand, just like in the manga, that purple coloration vanishes, and he then overpowers Askin as before. So what's going on here? The obvious theory is that Kisuke's hand has become infected by the death dealing during their clash, and by restructuring it, he's rid himself of the poison. That certainly makes some sense, except for a couple of things. Firstly, that's not really how we've ever known or seen the death dealing to work, and to that end, no other character has ever exhibited this kind of discoloration as though they are actively being infected, even characters who have been completely poisoned, like Yoruichi. Now, it could of course be that this only occurs when Askin is in his Volston dish, when the target is within the Gift Ball Deluxe, but I don't know. The fact is, though, that Kisuke, poisoned or not, still increases his arm's physical strength just like in the manga, as he still sends Askin flying. But we'll get back to that in a moment. We then see Kisuke demonstrating his new movement abilities by skating throughout the battlefield, diving and darting, weaving between buildings in an effort to catch up to where he just launched his enemy. Again, you can clearly see how it works in this final shot. He's simply resting his blade, pointing it downwards in such a way that it continuously pierces the space in front of him, while constantly being propelled along the newly generated stitches. As Kisuke launches a second attack at Askin, we are treated to even more totally new action. Askin repels Kisuke this time, and unleashes a barrage of gift balls at the same time. As the gift balls close in, we see Kisuke uses his Bankai to split the gift balls apart without touching them, pulling open the space between them with his stitches, and then shredding them to nothing. I would assume Kisuke cuts the gift balls to achieve this effect, though he doesn't seem to move. Anyway, next up, now here's why I don't necessarily think the strange discoloration of Kisuke's skin is meant to be indicative of him being poisoned. I could be totally wrong. I'm not saying one is definitively right, but I think it may just be showing us where he's targeting his own body with his Bankai. Because as Askin conjures a huge volley of gift balls to fling at Kisuke, Kisuke targets his foot with his Bankai and restructures it in several places, before then being capable of leaping, ducking, and dodging in order to weave in and out of the poison orbs, cutting through some as he does with his blade. And here's the thing that's weird. In this instance, Kisuke's foot only turns dark once he restructures it, and said darkness also doesn't disappear afterwards either. So to be honest, I don't really know. On one hand, it would make sense for him to be removing poison from himself, but again, the death dealing has never really been shown to operate like that, or to look like that, unless again it's specifically due to being inside the Gift Ball Deluxe. But secondly, Kisuke seems to make his foot change colour as a result of the restructuring. Yet, on the flip side of that, his hand was already discoloured, and loses said coloration after being restructured, so I really don't know. If I personally had to go with one or the other, I would say the discoloration is simply meant to be showing us what he is targeting on himself, but I could easily be wrong. Either way, watching him restructure his foot and then using that new agility to avoid the onslaught of gift balls is again something I always wanted to see. In my past videos on Urahara's Bankai, I've talked before at length about how I imagine he could probably restructure his legs to jump incredibly high or run incredibly fast, and this is kind of a brief look at that sort of thing happening. Ultimately, Askin conjures one final enormous wave of gift balls, including a gigantic orb, resulting in Kisuke riding his stitches up into the air to circumvent it before diving down into the rest, slicing through them as he goes. In another new moment, Askin appears behind Kisuke and smacks him from his stitch rail, sending him flying down to the ground below, before he then heads back up into the air once again. Later, once Grimjo arrives and Kisuke reveals that he built a path from the opening in the Gift Ball Deluxe all the way to where they were fighting, as we see how Grimjo made it to them, I think I was probably wrong about what I thought happened here previously based on the manga. In chapter 666, I feel like there's a fairly obvious and prominent doorway on the floor here, which Kisuke's Bankai opened up right behind Askin, allowing for Grimjo to leap through and impale the sternritter in the back. And again, I think it's fairly prominent. But that's not here in the anime, and instead, I'm guessing Grimjo rode the stitches here in a similar fashion to Kisuke, or were the stitches just supposed to direct Grimjo to the right place? Anyway, as the fight comes to an end, as I mentioned in my live discussion, it's a shame they didn't show the stitches on Kisuke's hand reopening here like they do in the manga, as his Bankai's effects begin to wear off under the stress of Gift Ball Deluxe going haywire, but the ones on his face, they are reopening as blood is now gushing out. But of course, as Kisuke collapses, nearing death, Benihime falls to the ground around him too, signalling the involuntary disengaging of his Bankai. The anime actually lessens Benehime's destruction quite a bit. In the manga, the puppet literally breaks apart. It crumbles like a statue, with Benehime's head separating and smashing down onto the floor, while her arm splits and falls separately too. But here, the entire doll crumbles at once, and there's a really nice glowing purple fracture effect as the puppet cracks, but doesn't totally break, before fading away. Either way, I like them both, and they both convey that Kisuke is in real trouble at the end of the fight. I just wonder if maybe the anime has tried to lessen that a little bit, so that we don't necessarily think that Kisuke is just straight up dead. So that's about it for everything new with Kisuke Urahara's Bankai, Kanon Biraki Benihime Aratame in the Thousand Year Blood War Arc anime. This is my personal favourite Bankai in the series, and I honestly could not be happier with how it was portrayed here. The new little accoutrements really help to continue to flesh out just how versatile this thing actually is. The new additions to the Bankai's imagery, to its theming, are absolutely wonderful. I adore how eerie and haunting it is when it first appears, as if crossing over from another dimension. Very, very cool. It's exactly the sort of thing I wanted. From reading the manga, and obviously being ecstatic at seeing Kisuke's Bankai, but kind of on reflection realizing that, you know, in comparison to something like Kyoraku's Bankai from earlier, or even Mairi's modified Bankai, it definitely felt rushed in comparison to those two. So giving it its flowers here, its well-deserved flowers, I was more than happy to see. And I'm very excited to see if they do something similar for, say, you know, the next new Bankai that are still yet to arrive, because those did also feel like they were kind of hastily churned through a little bit as we rapidly approached the end of the series. So with fewer than 20 chapters to go now, there's plenty of room for new content, and I'm very, very excited to see how everything looks moving forward. But alright guys, thank you so very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Kisuke's Bankai down in the comments below. How do you like how it was portrayed here in the anime? Did I miss anything regarding the new aspects of the Bankai? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Is there anything you wanted to see from the Bankai that perhaps didn't happen? Maybe so. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts, so do please let me know. Consider hitting subscribe if you haven't done already to help push us to 300,000 subs. We're inching ever closer, but it is only going to be possible with your help. And of course, check out the Patreon down below as well. Your support over there means absolutely everything, and that is a huge boon to the channel that, again, is only possible thanks to you guys. So again, I appreciate you all so very much. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.